no radio at all. Not even with the bombing plane that's coming over. All radio is dead.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
All right, welcome to another episode of Horror of the Worlds, where we talk about, actually this week we're talking about more of a legacy, where we're going to talk about a person. Well, today's actually a person, but a man that has pretty much come from rags to riches, always been in the film industry, had so many highs and falls, possibly you would want to consider an entrepreneur, and is the forefront of a system or a subgenre that we don't really pay attention to unless you're part of this horror family. We were talking about none other than Charles Band's Full Moon Features. So let's just give a quick past history on Charles Robert Band. He was born December 27th, 1951, son of, actually I think his father and his grandfather were both producers and even directors out in Italy, but son of a producer and director, Albert Band, and brother to a composer, Richard Band. Both have actually worked for Full Moon Features and Empire Pictures as well, which is freaking amazing. I mean, how many people actually get to work with their family? Employ them and work hand in hand. So, as a young kid, he was always Charles was always really into, trying to make money, try to do something with movies, even when it comes to creating Lifetime membership cards to distribute movies, or not, so I shouldn't say distribute movies, to show movies to other kids and other family members, in underground Italy, Rome, that was built on top of Rome, and, even talking his way out of getting arrested by cops or the policia and all that stuff. Such an amazing man on that end. He was always on the forefront, knew what he wanted to do because, at the time, when he was spending time with his father and stuff, on some of the movie sets, he kind of bumped elbows with Charlie Chaplin, Marilyn Monroe. Supposedly was babysitted by Marilyn Monroe, so he's been told, and so he has told as well. I don't know, which is it's just fascinating. So he's always been on the movie set. He doesn't know anything else other than movies, and it shows. He has that passion. So as a young kid too, I think around 12, 13, he's been in the hospital for intestinal problems, where he ended up closely dying a couple times. One of the times he was 3 hours away from his dad when his dad was making a movie, a Hercules movie, and almost died then. A couple years later again, when in his later teen years, almost died in Mexico because his friend was feeding him nothing but peanuts, literally pretty much nuts, and compacted his colon and almost died in Mexico. So he's, kind of a pointless history to kind of tell in a moment like this, but it's still part of his history. It's kind of crazy that he's been on the verge of death so many freaking times. But it's nothing that he's almost kind of not used to. It even toughened him up because he's had a career of so many ups and lows, pretty much bankrupt, losing everything, getting it back, losing everything again, and getting it back because he doesn't know, you gotta love the good man for that. Love or hate his movies, you'll love him for this. So yeah, if you want to learn more about his past or more about him and his actual upbringing, more in depth about what I'm going to be talking about, I highly recommend either listening to or buying Confessions of a Puppet Master, a Hollywood memoir of ghouls, guts, and gonzo filmmaking. Because he does kind of get into his nitty gritty and all the things that he's had to suffer through, push through, persevere when it comes to his relationships, kids, movies, being fucked over by Paramount and some of his partners and stuff. One of his partners, when he was in, this is amazing. He's done it quite a few times. All right, so one of his first movies, let's get that out of the way because we always love our first. His first movie that he ever made, which he says that he tries to forget about at times, is The Last Foxtrot in Burbank in 1973. So like that was like one of his very first movies. Later on, he ended up doing the movie Crash, because back then everyone wanted, like that was in 1977. Everyone wanted a car crash movie. So he made, think of it as Christine, Stephen King's Christine, which came out after this movie, but same idea, not the same, not stolen. Which he didn't also realize that he licensed like 50 cars under his name and had to pay a fee for pretty much abandoning almost all 50 cars. Later on in his life, over in Rome, or Italy, he created Empire Pictures. This is around 83. I want to say failed in like 88 for him. Around this whole time frame, he ended up buying a film studio, which I have not written it down. He ended up buying a film studio that was, I want to say about like 100 acres of land, very dilapidated, owned by another very famous director, producer. And he ended up also buying a castle around this time frame as well. So he had a film studio, he had a castle, he was making movies, he was distributing movies, because he was one of the very first independent companies to actually start producing VHS movies, or the Betamax movies as well. Some of his movies that he ended up licensing was, like one of the first movies that he ended up licensing to distribute was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's pretty fucking amazing. Which, at the same time, I know it's off subject, I am throwing everything out there, because that's what I do. If you watch this before, you know I am so scatterminded. He also got into video games. Ended up doing the Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre on the old ass Atari. I mean, as you know, the graphics were garbage, but they were also at that time frame where you had to ask people at the register, can I get the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game? And they ended up just pretty much hiding it, throwing it in a paper bag, and like handing it to you, like, all right, here you go. I guess a nudie magazine or something. The good old times when video games were bad, you know? But yeah, during this time he was at or I should say that the production company that he was doing for the movies was called Meda, MEDA, which Home Entertainment, which later on, when he ended up getting screwed over by his partners at the time, ended up adding an I to it, calling it Media Home Entertainment. A lot more catchy, but they ended up buying them out and kind of screwing them over. They didn't last that much longer after he ended up getting bought out, putting that politely. He made a bunch of movies, like a lot of movies that we know of that we don't really think, or I don't really think of as being a Charles Band movie or Full Moon Features or anything under that umbrella. You know, you have, I want to say Fairy Tales was underneath it, Laser Blast, which Fairy Tales was like the first appearance of Linnea Quigley, a scream queen that he's had in other of his movies as well. Laser Blast, which had a lot of awesome like sci-fi stop motion. I always kind of remember it as the aliens being like naked turtles. I'll post a picture up here somewhere, and I'm pretty sure this is a movie that you've at least seen images of. Another famous one that a lot of people actually, I feel like a good amount of us will know, is Tourist Trap, which during the filming of this, he was kind of kicking it with John Carpenter when he was making Halloween. And I don't want to say ego is a wrong word, but to think of Charles Band's confidence in himself and his ability, he was believing that the Halloween movie was going to go nowhere, it was going to go unseen, and Tourist Trap was going to be the next big thing. But this movie also almost killed him and his family when he was taking money from, he was unaware of one of the actors' friends that was part of the mafia lent him some money and wanted it back. Good old mafia. This other movie too, that he ended up doing, which was one of his first 3D movies, also started her career as a very phenomenal actress. You've seen her ass on some of the movie covers. Yes, we're talking about Parasite 3D with Demi Moore's very first like on-screen appearance, like first movie role appearance. And by her ass, I'm talking about I Spit on Your Grave. We've all seen that cover. We all have seen that cover. Which Demi Moore's also made a movie recently that is so phenomenal. So if you're listening to this or watching this, I highly recommend hunting down The Substance that came out here in 2024. It is a movie that it may be a slow burn. God damn, the last 2/3 of the movie is so breakneck. If you love the female body, you'll love this fucking movie to begin with. Body horror. I'm gonna leave it at that. I want to say Cronenberg would be happy about this movie. Parasite that he made under this label. From Beyond, Reanimator. We all know and love Reanimator under Empire Records, under Empire Productions, or under Empire Pictures. This is when he became really good friends with Stuart Gordon. During this time frame, I want to say this is when all of these big movies that we don't feel like that are under him is actually under him. MGM bought the rights and they have them pretty much forever. I mean, you have Dolls that was under this company. You have Ghoulies. Come on, Ghoulies. You know that little critter coming out of a fucking toilet on the cover art. You know, that movie has had its own fucking issues. So he's been behind these icons that, sadly, I think a lot of us, even myself included, was unaware that he was behind it. He started these movies. He helped create, granted they didn't need help, but Stuart Gordon's like career, Barbara Crampton's, Linnea Quigley's, you know, like he has started so much, and I am leaving out names. Almost a laundry list of names. So kind of after the end of Empire Pictures fell, when his empire fell, it was because he was spending more money than he was making, because he was always living and making picture-to-picture movies, you know, and he had such a quick turnaround when it came to producing and making these movies, which he still does. It's usually 2 to 3 weeks of shooting, which is fucking crazy. Like even by today's standards, that is still breakneck speeds. But he's almost, I want to consider like the South Park of horror movies and sci-fi movies, where he's able to come up with an idea, write it down, or have someone else write it, shoot it, produce it, and it's out. You know, he's able to stay topical. So but the empire fell because he was in such debt, and the bank pretty much took away, like it was like either you pay this debt, the 20 some odd million dollars in debt. This is back in the 80s, so 20 million was, and still is, a shit ton of money. So it's either leave everything behind, you can't take anything with you. So unfortunately, he left it all behind. It's kind of fortunate because he ended up falling and getting back up with Paramount Pictures and pretty much starting what we know as Full Moon Feature. You know, like one of the first movies that he made and continues to make is Puppet Master. The one that we all know. When we think of Full Moon, we think of either Castle Freak or Puppet Master. Personally, you also have other amazing movies as like Ginger Dead Man that came out like in the early 2000s with Gary Busey, that also starred his current wife as of recording. Subspecies, which is his vampire series, which I want to say just ended his 5th movie, fairly recent as well. And one of the movies that I didn't realize that was that kind of got me into Full Moon, which was Evil Bong, because of Tommy Chong. You know, who doesn't want an evil bong that will trap you inside and die stoned in front of strippers? During my stoner phase, I fucking love this movie. But so during Paramount, they gave him a pretty good deal at first, where he had to pay for his movies instead of getting money, and he'll actually receive money from the movies. But he also kept the rights to them. When Paramount and all that stuff went sour, he was able to keep the name Full Moon. He was able to keep the movies that he was making, the Subspecies. He didn't really have to start over again. One of the things that ended up helping him make a lot more money, I also didn't really realize. I keep on saying that because it's just full moon is so big and so ingrained in, I want to say, a lot of our history, especially if you're around my age. As he ended up doing a more of a family orientated production company called Moonbeam, and one of his biggest movies that I guess got his name out there, didn't make him really any money, made him thousands from the millions that the movie made, was Prehysteria, which was a kid that had real life miniature dinosaurs. I watched the shit out of that movie when I was a young kid. When Jurassic Park was that and the Land Before Time. I haven't seen a lot of those in over 20 years, but still. Again, things with Paramount went sour. He still had full moon features. He still had Moonbeam. I know I'm glossing over a lot, but it's a short episode. He also ended up kind of getting into, I don't know, I don't really want to call it smut, because it's not really smut, it's more softcore. You know, his surrender cinema, where it became more sexual, more sensual. Later on he described it as more gay, because there was less females being sexual and more men, more good-looking men and tighty-whities. They were more looked at. These kind of movies were the only ones that was making him money at this time. He wasn't a huge fan of the softcore, but he liked it because he was able to kind of, and it wasn't really porn, it was more sensual, more sexual, but he was more okay and behind it because he was able to make it a little bit more sci-fi, a little bit more horror, actually created like a little bit of a story behind it. I'm gonna mispronounce the name, but Fema Alien, which was one of his biggest movies, one of like the first movies of this kind of like genre. Again, I know I am skipping over so much. Like, he has an individual and a company been around for 50 plus years, pretty much succeeded and failed in every decade since. I can't hit everything in however long this episode is going to be. Like, I highly recommend watching some of his videos, supporting him, subscribe to his app, you know, throw him some money, because this man has deserved it and does deserve it. Also, during one of his lows, he ended up trying to figure out a way to make money, because he was and still is pretty much based out of Los Angeles, California. So like Monsterpalooza and all these horror cons were a staple. They were becoming big like they are now. Or not as big as they are now, but he started doing a Full Moon Roadshow, which he would take his merch and some of his movies and, you know, try to sell things. You know, going from con to con. You know, that's how he kind of got his name out there again, how he started becoming out there in the zeitgeist. You know, so he was doing all of this. He was creating these action figures, which, because of these action figures, he actually got to meet and know Michael Jackson a little bit as well, because, not because of the horror aspect, but the toys. He just knows so many freaking people and has, like I used the term earlier, bumped elbows with so many people, especially being ensconced in LA, where, come on, it's fucking Hollywood. For the most part, you know, he was with his girlfriend, now wife, but he was out in Florida, you know, at one of his booths and all that stuff, selling his merch and signing autographs. And come to find out, since he's been dodging all these bills, he ended up getting arrested. Yeah, that's right. Charles Band got arrested at a fucking con, where some cops came up and asked him if he wanted to go out back so he could get arrested, so he's not really in front of everyone else. His darker times, I should say, because he's already lost his companies. He's already lost, at this time, I want to say he lost one of his studios in the process of losing another one of his studios. Yes, this man has owned 2 studio lots. One out in Rome, the other one out in Romania. Yeah, he kind of got fucked over on both of them as well. He's always seen the good in people, but after this arrest, he realized that he was loved by the people in his family that were there to help and support him. That even though he wasn't able to provide like he was, or like he did before, that they will help provide for him. So after losing everything, selling off 30 plus houses, like in LA, selling property in other countries as well, and selling off almost all of his assets, he had to move into an apartment with his girlfriend. I can't remember her last name, but Robin. it's hard for anyone to have everything or have so much and then go back and then start from square one. But he did. And he's still fighting and he's still kicking ass. During this whole time frame, he was also one of the first independent people to start his own streaming service, like on his website. Not the first, one of the first independents. Again, like he's always been on the forefront of so many different parts of distribution. You know, it's either he succeeded at it or he was just a little bit too early to succeed at it, which later on, Amazon ended up helping him out by putting an app on the service back when they started like Prime Video. And he later on ended up creating his own app service that helped give him a consistent cash flow, which something that he didn't have. He, like I said before, he was always living pretty much paycheck to paycheck, movie to movie, moment to moment. Now, because of us, the fans, the ones that want to support horror, that want to support the love, and yes, his genre might not be what everyone likes, because it is not that scary, blood-soaked, creepy. Like, it is horror at heart, some dark comedy. I get it. It's not for everyone. I enjoy it. It's what people consider a guilty pleasure, because my pleasures aren't guilty. With this app software and his website, and he runs deals, like you're able to buy one-on-one replicas of so many of his, like Ginger Dead Man goes on sale occasionally. His Puppet Masters go on sale. You know, I want to say he's even had the Evil Bong replica on his website. So, not sponsored, but Charles Band, if you're watching, or any of you guys are watching, say hi. I appreciate it. One of the things that I said that he stays on top of things, because he ended up, I want to say, filming and making one of his genres that are, well, not one of his genres, one of his ideas that are spreading throughout a couple movies, like Puppet Master did, is Barbie and Kendra was on top of the whole coronavirus. Again, that's why I kind of say he is like the South Park of horror movies. Comes up with an idea and will exploit it. That's one thing that he's really good at, is exploitation in a kind of a non-offensive way. You have to look to be offended by his movies. I can't stop you from thinking that way. I can't stop you from being that way. It's just, stop it. Just enjoy a goddamn movie. I don't know, off topic again. I know I'm kind of a little bit scatter-minded. Is more a little bit about him, and kind of helps out with all of his movies where he's created franchises within his studio. Like I said, Puppet Master is Subspecies. Barbie and Kendra. Like, he created that. He's always been a nerd, you know, when it comes to like Marvel and DC, predominantly Marvel comics. Even back when, in his earlier years. And I'm not saying that as in a mean, derogatory way. He created that Marvel universe back in the 90s. Before MCU was a thing, he had his MCU under the full moon when it comes with demonic toys fighting other creatures in his movies. He created his own universe. You know, some would say created his own universe under a full moon. Hopefully you found some of that entertaining. Hopefully this inspired you to look more into him, read his book, listen to his podcast. It's on YouTube. Go follow it. See you later.